Most men are used to predictable emotional responses from women. They've learned what to say to make her chase, what to do to make her angry, and what buttons to push to get a reaction. But when a man encounters a Sigma female and she suddenly stops reacting to his antics, his entire playbook goes out the window. It's a psychological earthquake, and the thoughts that race through his mind are often a mixture of confusion, fear, and a painful dose of self-reflection. The Sigma female's greatest superpower isn't her intelligence or her independence, it's her emotional self-mastery. She doesn't just manage her emotions, she controls their deployment. When she decides to withdraw her energetic response, she isn't being cold, she's being strategic. Today, we're diving deep into the male psyche to uncover the 9 startling things men think when a Sigma female stops reacting to their words, their games, or their provocations. For a man who relies on external validation or emotional drama to feel significant, a Sigma female's non-reaction is a direct threat to his ego. He is used to being able to move women with his actions, and when that power is stripped away, he enters a state of profound insecurity. Her silence isn't empty, it's filled with his own rising panic. 1. Is she even listening to me? The immediate gut-level thought that strikes a man when a Sigma woman stops reacting is a profound sense of doubt regarding her attention. Is she even listening to me? In the vast majority of social and romantic interactions, men are accustomed to a specific set of visible and audible cues that signal engagement. They expect the nods of agreement, the furrowed brows of disagreement, the sympathetic sighs, or even the sharp, audible gasps of surprise. These are the performative responses that act as the lubricant for standard conversation. For many men, these reactions serve as a constant feedback loop that validates their presence and confirms that their words are having an impact. When you, as a Sigma woman, suddenly withdraw these cues and meet his speech with a steady, unblinking stillness, you effectively break that feedback loop. To him, the silence feels like a void where his importance used to be. He instinctively assumes that because you aren't performing an emotional reaction, you must be distracted, bored, or simply tuned out. His ego cannot easily process the idea of a listener who is fully present but entirely unreactive. What he fails to realize is that in your silence, you are likely listening more intently than anyone he has ever met. While most people listen to respond, a Sigma woman listens to analyze. You are not distracted, you are processing. You are dissecting the subtext of his words, noticing the patterns in his tone, and observing the body language that contradicts his verbal narrative. You have moved past the need for performative engagement because you are focused on the raw data of the interaction. However, to the man standing before you, this high-level cognitive processing looks like a lack of interest. He feels a rising sense of frustration because he is used to moving women with his stories or his arguments. When his words fail to elicit a flinch or a smile, he begins to feel invisible. He stops feeling like the protagonist of the conversation and starts feeling like he is talking to a brick wall. This perceived lack of attention feels like a personal affront to his importance. It suggests that he isn't powerful enough to command your emotional energy. This moment of doubt is the first step in his psychological unraveling. He may start to repeat himself, speak louder, or become increasingly animated in a desperate attempt to recapture your attention. He is searching for that familiar click of connection that comes from an emotional reaction. But the more he performs, the more you retreat into your analytical stillness. You are teaching him that your attention is not something he can manipulate or demand through social theatrics. He stops feeling safe in the conversation because he realizes he has no way to gauge his influence over you. He is forced to confront the possibility that his words might not be as compelling or as impactful as he once believed. This unsafety is born from the realization that you are a woman who cannot be bought with a good story or scared with a loud voice. You are a silent witness to his reality, and in that silence, his own insecurities begin to echo louder than his words. By the time he realizes that you were indeed listening, and perhaps understanding him better than he understands himself. The dynamic of the relationship has already shifted toward your absolute emotional sovereignty. 2. Did I go too far? Is she done? The second thought that begins to haunt a man when a Sigma woman stops reacting is a cold, creeping sense of finality. Did I go too far? Is she done? This is a primal fear that stems from a sudden realization that he has crossed a line he didn't even know existed. In most relationships, men are used to a warning system of emotional friction. When they push too hard, act out of pocket, or disrespect a boundary, they expect an immediate flare-up of anger or a verbal confrontation. These reactive outbursts, while stressful, actually provide a sense of security for a man because they signal that the woman is still emotionally invested and fighting for the connection. To him, an argument is a sign that the door is still open. But when a Sigma woman meets a provocation with absolute chilling silence, that warning system is gone. He realizes that instead of exploding, you have imploded into a state of total detachment. The absence of heat doesn't mean the fire is out. It means you have moved beyond the point of caring enough to argue. This moment of non-reaction triggers a state of panic in his psyche, because he knows that a Sigma woman's silence is her internal exit strategy. He understands, perhaps for the first time, that your patience is not a bottomless well, but a finite resource. When you stop reacting to his drama or his slights, he suspects that you have moved from the negotiation phase into the execution phase. He thinks, is this the moment she's decided I'm no longer worth the energy? This thought is terrifying because he knows that once a Sigma woman checks out emotionally, there is almost no path back. You don't make threats and you don't give ultimatums. You simply reach a conclusion and act upon it. He realizes that while he was busy testing your limits, you were busy observing his character, and he has failed the test. The unsafety he feels here is the weight of his own consequences. He is used to women who he can charm back after a mistake, but your silence tells him that his charm is now a bankrupt currency. Furthermore, this fear of finality forces him to confront the gravity of his own behavior. Without your reaction to distract him or to blame for making things worse, he is left alone with his own actions. He starts to replay the last few minutes or hours in his head, searching for the specific moment he lost you. He feels a sense of mounting dread because he can sense that you are already mentally packing your bags. Your lack of reaction isn't a plea for him to apologize. It is the quiet sound of a bridge being burned. He stops feeling safe because he realizes he has lost his leverage. He can no longer count on your emotional attachment to keep you in the room. He understands that you would rather be alone in your own peace than in a relationship that requires you to constantly defend your dignity. By the time he realizes that his tough guy act or his manipulative games have cost him the most stable partner he's ever had, she has already begun her journey toward a future that no longer includes him. 3. I can't read her. What is she thinking? The third psychological hurdle a man encounters when a Sigma woman stops reacting is a profound, almost claustrophobic sense of confusion. I can't read her. What is she thinking? For most men, navigating a relationship is like reading a map of emotional cues. They rely on the visible landscape of a woman's face, the tightening of the jaw, the rolling of the eyes, or the softening of a smile, to tell them where they stand. These cues provide a sense of safety because they make the woman predictable. Even if she is angry, at least he knows she is angry. But when a Sigma woman decides to withdraw her energetic response, her face becomes an unreadable mask of absolute neutrality. She doesn't offer the data he needs to calculate his next move. He stares at her, searching for a flickering shadow of frustration or a hint of sadness. But he finds nothing but a calm, steady presence that reveals nothing. This lack of emotional feedback feels like being blindfolded in the middle of a critical conversation. This inability to read you triggers a deep-seated insecurity because it highlights his lack of control. A man who cannot read his partner cannot manipulate her, and he certainly cannot manage her. He feels unsafe because his usual social radar has gone offline. He starts to feel like he is standing on the edge of a vast, dark lake, unable to see what lies beneath the surface. Is she planning to leave? Is she laughing at him internally? Is she completely indifferent? The mystery of your internal state becomes more threatening than any argument could ever be. He realizes that while he is an open book of reactions and triggers, you are a coded manuscript to which he has lost the key. This realization strips him of his confidence. He stops speaking with authority and starts speaking with a tentative, questioning tone, hoping to find a crack in your armor. He is desperate for a reaction, any reaction, just to prove that he still has the power to elicit a response. Furthermore, this unreadability forces him to project his own fears onto your silence. Because you aren't telling him what to think, his own mind begins to fill the void with his darkest suspicions. He assumes that if you aren't reacting, you must be judging him with a cold, intellectual precision. He begins to feel like a specimen under a microscope. The unsafety he feels is the discomfort of being watched by someone who remains invisible. He realizes that your silence is not a lack of thought, but a surplus of it, a quiet storm of analysis that he is not invited to participate in. He feels exposed because your stillness acts as a mirror, reflecting his own desperate need for a reaction back at him. By the time he realizes that your unreadability is a sign of your emotional sovereignty, he has already lost his footing in the relationship. He understands that he is no longer the leader of the dynamic. He is merely a participant in a game where you hold all the cards and he can't even see the deck. This is the moment he realizes that knowing a Sigma woman is a privilege he has forfeited by trying to manage her instead of respecting her depth. Her silence isn't empty, it's a profound statement. If you've ever had a man struggle because he couldn't read you, drop a cipher in the comments. And if you're a woman who understands the power of a poker face, hit that subscribe button. Now, let's talk about his tactics failing. 4. My usual tricks aren't working. The fourth internal crisis a man faces when a Sigma woman stops reacting is the stinging realization that his entire psychological arsenal has become obsolete. My usual tricks aren't working. For most men, the social world is navigated through a series of tested maneuvers designed to elicit specific responses. They have learned that a certain tone of voice can trigger a woman's guilt, that a strategic withdrawal can make her chase, or that a bit of alpha posturing can make her more agreeable. They feel safe in their relationships as long as these buttons continue to work. It gives them a sense of predictable power. But when these same tactics are applied to a Sigma woman who has decided to disengage emotionally, the result is a chilling, hollow silence. He throws out a subtle insult disguised as a joke, expecting a defensive rebuttal, and you simply look at him. He tries to ignite her jealousy by mentioning another woman, and you meet him with a look of mild, detached curiosity. Every trick he launches hits the floor without a sound. This failure of his playbook creates a deep sense of inadequacy and frustration. A man who relies on manipulation to feel secure suddenly feels like a magician whose audience can see the trapdoors and the hidden mirrors. He realizes that you aren't just not reacting, you are seeing right through the machinery of his behavior. He feels unsafe because his primary methods of influence have been neutralized. He begins to panic, often cycling through his tactics at an accelerated rate, hoping to find just one trigger that still works. He might move from being overly charming to being cold and dismissive, then back to being apologetic, all within a single hour. But a Sigma woman's non-reaction is like a digital firewall. It filters out the noise and only lets the truth pass through. To him, this feels like losing his voice. He realizes that he cannot game his way into your heart or your head, and for a man who has never learned how to be authentic, this is a terrifying prospect. Furthermore, the realization that his tricks are failing forced him to confront the shallowness of his own character. Without the distraction of your emotional response to hide behind, he is forced to see his behavior for what it truly is, a series of immature power plays. He feels exposed because your stillness acts as a silent critique of his lack of integrity. He stops feeling like the hunter or the strategist and starts feeling like a child who has been caught in a lie. The unsafety he feels here is the discomfort of being forced into a state of radical honesty that he isn't prepared for. He understands that if he wants to reach you, he has to stop performing and start being, but he isn't sure who he is without the scripts he's been following his entire life. By refusing to react to his tricks, you have effectively disarmed him and demanded that he show up as a real man, not a collection of tactics. 5. She doesn't need my approval or validation. The fifth, and perhaps most ego-bruising thought that occupies a man's mind when a Sigma woman stops reacting is the stark realization of her self-sufficiency. She doesn't need my approval or my validation. In the traditional landscape of romantic dynamics, many men derive their sense of worth from being the primary source of a woman's emotional stability. They feel safe when they are the judge and jury of her self-esteem. They enjoy the power that comes with knowing their compliments can make her day, while their critiques can send her into a spiral of self-doubt. This dependency creates a hierarchy where the man is the provider of emotional worth. But when a Sigma woman reaches the point where she stops reacting to his opinions, whether they are flattering or scathing, that hierarchy collapses instantly. He realizes that you have an internal compass that is completely independent of his magnetic field. You don't look to him to tell you if you are beautiful, intelligent, or capable. You already know that you are. When his attempts to validate you or diminish you are met with a calm, indifferent silence, he feels his significance evaporating. This realization is psychologically destabilizing for a man who ties his masculinity to his ability to influence his partner. He feels unsafe because he has lost his most potent emotional hook. If he can't move you with his praise and he can't shake you with his disapproval, he realizes he has no leverage over your soul. He begins to feel like a ghost in his own relationship, a man whose voice has no weight and whose presence has no impact. He thinks, if she doesn't need me to feel good about herself, then what do I actually offer her? This existential crisis is common for men who haven't developed their own internal value. They rely on the chase and the rescue to feel important. But a Sigma woman who doesn't react is a woman who doesn't need to be rescued or chased. She is already whole. He feels a sense of mounting irrelevance as he watches you move through the world with a confidence that is entirely self-generated and impenetrable to his meddling. Furthermore, your lack of reaction to his validation proves that you are not a possession that can be managed through psychological rewards. He stops feeling safe because he realizes that your commitment to him is a choice, not a compulsion driven by a need for his approval. He understands that if he stops being a person who adds genuine value, you won't stay just because you're addicted to his good days. Your emotional sovereignty means that you can see him clearly without the filter of your own insecurities. To an insecure man, this is terrifying. He can't hide his flaws behind a curtain of emotional manipulation. He realizes that to stay in your life, he must actually be a man of substance, rather than just acting like one to get a reaction. By refusing to be moved by his validation, you have effectively told him that his currency is no good in your kingdom. This is the moment he realizes that winning a Sigma woman isn't about the words he says, but about the man he actually is, and he begins to fear that he may not be enough. 6. Is she hiding something? Is she planning something? The sixth psychological shift occurs when a man's confusion turns into a dark, invasive suspicion. Is she hiding something? Is she planning something? When a Sigma woman stops reacting, her silence becomes a blank canvas upon which an insecure man projects his greatest fears. Because he cannot track her emotional state through her facial expressions or verbal cues, his mind begins to fill the void with paranoid scenarios. In his experience, people are rarely just quiet. They are usually quiet because they are concealing a secret, harboring a grudge, or calculating a maneuver. He feels unsafe because he equates your stillness with a hidden agenda. He starts to wonder if your lack of reaction to his latest mistake or his attempt at manipulation is because you've already found someone else, or because you are quietly preparing to leave him. He looks at your calm, unblinking eyes and doesn't see peace. He sees a strategist who has already moved 3 steps ahead of him on a chessboard he didn't even know they were playing on. This paranoia is a direct result of his inability to fathom a mind that is genuinely self-contained. To a man who lives outwardly, processing everything through social feedback, a woman who processes everything internally feels like a threat. He thinks, if she isn't arguing with me, she must be arguing with herself about whether to stay. He begins to analyze your every move for clues. Why did she stay at work late? Why is her phone face down? Why did she just smile at a text message without telling him who it was from? Under normal circumstances, he might have asked, but now that you've stopped reacting to his inquiries, he feels he cannot trust the answers anyway. He feels like he is living with a double agent. The unsafety he feels here is the anxiety of being left in the dark. He realizes that you have a private life within your own mind that he has no access to, and he assumes that anything he doesn't know must be a threat to his position in your life. Furthermore, this suspicion reflects his own lack of integrity. He assumes you are planning something because that is what he would do if he were in your position. He cannot conceive of a silence that is born of pure emotional sovereignty and a refusal to engage in petty drama. He views your non-reaction as a calm before the storm. He waits for the other shoe to drop, for the sudden "we need to talk" conversation, or for the day he comes home to an empty house. This constant state of high alert is exhausting for him. He realizes that while he is burning up energy trying to solve your silence, you are simply living your life. This creates a massive power imbalance. He is the one who is reacting now, reacting to your lack of reaction. By the time he realizes that your silence wasn't a plan but simply a boundary, he has already revealed how little trust he has in the connection. He understands that your hidden world is simply the part of you that he hasn't earned the right to see, and that realization is the most haunting plan of all. The ultimate power move isn't what you say, it's what you don't say. If you've ever watched a man squirm because he couldn't get a rise out of you, give this video a like, and make sure you're subscribed for more insights into the unshakable Sigma. Next, we explore his fear of being judged. 7. She's judging me silently. The 7th thought that begins to erode a man's confidence when a Sigma woman stops reacting is the heavy, inescapable feeling of being scrutinized. She's judging me silently. For a man who relies on verbal feedback to navigate social hierarchies, silence is never neutral. It is an active, analytical force. When he speaks or acts and you offer no rebuttal, no defense, and no emotional counterattack, he feels as though he is standing in a courtroom where the judge refuses to speak. He projects his own guilt and insecurities onto your stillness. He assumes that while he is performing his tough guy act or trying to deflect blame, you are internally cataloging his flaws with clinical precision. He feels unsafe because he can sense your internal audit. He imagines you are weighing his words against his actions, spotting the inconsistencies in his logic, and reaching a definitive conclusion about his character that he won't be able to appeal. This perceived judgment is far more terrifying to him than a loud argument, because an argument allows him to defend himself, whereas your silence offers him no target to hit. This psychological pressure turns your non-reaction into a mirror that reflects his own inadequacy. Without your emotional heat to distract him, he is forced to look at the cold reality of his own behavior. He thinks, "She sees right through me. She knows I'm bluffing. She knows I'm afraid." He begins to feel small in your presence. He starts to overanalyze his own movements, wondering if his body language is betraying his inner turmoil. He stops feeling like the dominant partner and starts feeling like a specimen under a microscope. To a man who has built his identity on being untraceable or unconquerable, the idea that a woman has silently mapped out his entire psyche is a devastating blow to his ego. He realizes that you aren't just not talking, you are observing him from a height he cannot reach. This creates a surge of internal panic, because he understands that once a Sigma woman has reached a silent judgment, she rarely changes her mind. He is waiting for a sentence to be passed, but the silence just continues, leaving him to be his own executioner through his rising anxiety. Furthermore, this sense of being judged proves that he can no longer charm his way out of accountability. Most men are used to women who will forgive and forget if they say the right words or make the right romantic gesture. But he senses that your silent judgment is based on data, not emotion. He realizes that he can't use sweet talk to erase a pattern of bad behavior that you have already silently documented. This makes him feel completely exposed. He feels unsafe because he knows that in your mind he is currently being demoted from a partner to a lesson. He understands that you aren't waiting for him to explain himself. You are simply waiting for him to finish revealing who he truly is, so you can make your final move. By the time he realizes that your judgment was actually just a commitment to reality, he has already lost the privilege of your respect. He is left with the haunting realization that while he was busy talking, you were busy seeing, and what you saw was enough to make you stop caring. 8. I need to escalate to get a reaction. The 8th psychological stage a man enters when met with a Sigma woman's non-reaction is a dangerous and desperate impulse. I need to escalate to get a reaction. This thought is born from a profound loss of emotional equilibrium. To a man who views relationships as a power struggle, a lack of response from his partner feels like a total loss of signal. He is used to a world where his actions have consequences, and his weight in the relationship is measured by how much he can move you. When his standard level of drama, criticism, or withdrawal fails to elicit even a flinch, he begins to panic. He feels unsafe in the stillness, and his ego convinces him that any reaction, even a negative or explosive one, is better than this chilling indifference. He believes that if he can just make you angry, make you cry, or make you yell, he will at least have proof that he still matters to you. He starts to push harder, speak louder, and act more erratically, effectively throwing psychological stones at your fortress just to see if anyone is still home. This escalation is the ultimate sign of his psychological defeat. He thinks that by turning up the volume, he can force you back into a reactive state where he feels comfortable again. He might resort to blatant disrespect, intense passive aggression, or even making grand dramatic threats about leaving. He is desperately searching for your breaking point. However, what he doesn't realize is that for a Sigma woman, his escalation only confirms the wisdom of her detachment. The more he acts out, the more he proves that he is emotionally unstable and incapable of meeting her at a level of maturity. While he thinks he is winning a reaction, he is actually just providing you with more data to justify your exit. You look at his spiraling behavior not with fear, but with a detached, clinical observation, the way a scientist might watch a volatile chemical reaction from behind a safety glass. To him, your continued calm in the face of his escalation is the ultimate unsafety. It tells him that he has no ceiling to his influence. He can go as high as he wants, and you will still be standing on the ground, unmoved. Furthermore, this desperate need for a reaction reveals his profound dependency on you for his own emotional reality. He feels that if he can't provoke you, he doesn't truly exist in your world. He stops feeling like a man and starts feeling like a ghost, screaming for attention that never comes. This realization is devastating. He understands that by escalating, he has lost his dignity, while you have maintained yours through silence. He is left standing there, loud and exhausted, while you remain centered and silent. He realizes that his attempt to break you has only broken the last remnants of his own credibility. He feels unsafe, because he knows that once the dust settles and his tantrum is over, you will still be the same unshakable force, and he will be the one who has to deal with the shame of his own behavior. By the time he realizes that his escalation was a trap for his own ego, he has already shown you that he is a man of noise, not a man of substance, and you have already decided that the noise is no longer worth your time. 9. I'm losing her / I've already lost her. The 9th and final realization that crashes down on a man when a Sigma woman stops reacting is the absolute soul-chilling certainty of loss. I'm losing her, or I've already lost her. This is the stage where the denial finally breaks, and the silence he once found frustrating now feels like a tomb. In the earlier stages of a conflict, a man often believes that as long as there is friction, there is hope. He views her anger as a sign of her passion and her tears as a sign of her attachment. But when a Sigma woman reaches the stage of non-reaction, it signifies that her emotional investment has been completely liquidated. He looks at you and realizes that you are no longer fighting for the relationship because you have already moved past it. You aren't playing hard to get or trying to teach him a lesson. You have simply withdrawn your spirit from the connection. He feels a sense of unsafety that is final and irreversible. He understands that while he was busy testing your boundaries, you were busy quietly closing the doors to your heart one by one until there was nothing left for him to access. This thought creates a profound sense of grief and helplessness. He realizes that his power over you was always an illusion that required your participation to exist. Now that you have opted out of the emotional exchange, he has nothing to hold on to. He thinks, if I can't move her, I can't keep her. He realizes that your silence is the quiet sound of a woman who has already visualized her life without him. He looks at your calm, centered presence and sees a woman who is already gone, even if she is still physically standing in the room. This is the moment he realizes that his games didn't make him more attractive. They made him obsolete. He feels the weight of his own mistakes because he knows that a Sigma woman doesn't leave with a bang. She leaves with a whisper or total silence. He understands that by the time she stops reacting, the decision has already been made in the quiet chambers of her mind, and there is no grand gesture or perfect apology that can reach her now. The climax of this journey for a man is the total and unavoidable death of his ego. When a Sigma woman stops reacting, she forces him to confront the reality that he is not the center of her universe. He realizes that his ability to provoke, charm, or manipulate was never a sign of his strength, but a sign of your previous patience. Now that the patience is gone, he is left standing alone in the wreckage of his own behavior. The unsafety he feels is the realization that he is entirely replaceable. He sees that while he was dependent on her reactions to feel powerful, she was always powerful on her own. This is the moment of radical truth. He either has to humble himself completely and attempt to earn back a seat at the table of her respect, or he has to walk away and carry the heavy burden of knowing he let a rare woman slip through his fingers because he was too small to handle her depth. In conclusion, a Sigma woman's non-reaction is the ultimate expression of her emotional sovereignty. It is the moment she decides that her peace is more valuable than any win in an argument or any validation from a man who doesn't respect her. To the man, this silence is terrifying because it is a mirror that reflects his own lack of self-mastery. To the woman, it is her sanctuary. It is the boundary that protects her from the noise and the drama of those who are not on her level. When you stop reacting, you aren't losing the battle. You are simply refusing to play a game that is beneath you. You are proving that your energy is a limited, high-value resource that is only available to those who treat it with the reverence it deserves. Have you ever experienced that moment where you simply ran out of reactions? How did it feel to watch the dynamic shift when you chose silence over drama? Share your stories in the comments below. Your strength inspires other women to reclaim their emotional autonomy. If you've learned that your non-reaction is your greatest shield, give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the Sigma psyche. Don't let anyone pull you out of your center. Protect your peace, own your silence, and watch our next video right now to learn more about the power of the unshakable woman.